Okay, it's 30 November, which means it's the end of November. We're getting into December. December, I think 20th is the beginning of winter. So, in Florida, we really have to worry about that. So let's see here. I'm Charlie Garrett. This is a CG Prophecy Report. Malicious communications galore. That and a lot of other things to go over on today's report. All right, so, I was just telling the church that I was going to do something here, and then I decided I'd just say it to the Prophecy Update people as well, is that last Sunday during the Prophecy Update, my daughter had a child. She had her second child, a boy, and I actually went to the hospital on Tuesday morning, and I held the child for an hour. Well, Hideko, she hadn't slept all night. She was with my daughter, and my daughter was obviously in no condition to be picking up anything. So I held my child for an hour, and now I am certain that I have enough points until that child is 28 years old. I've done my job. I'm not a little person, and that's when I say my own children got really interesting, was at 28. Before that, I just let Hideko handle it. So, good. I've done my job. But anyway, it was very nice to have both of them healthy. You're going to deliver a baby one way or another. My concern was actually my daughter, and she made it through. She is alive, and that's really the greatest gift I could have. The greatest thanks I could have is that my daughter made it through that pregnancy, and I would hope she doesn't do this for a third time, because she doesn't handle pregnancy well, and both times it was really critical. Anyway, we got some news from Israel. Times of Israel. Greece in talks to buy anti-aircraft artillery systems from Israel. Athens said it will spend about $33 billion by 2036 to modernize its armed forces as it emerges from a 2009-2018 debt crisis. Remember, they were always talking about how they needed to have austerity, and nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to cut and say, I'm not going to spend, and we're going to stop these government programs. Austerity, austerity. We heard about that for years, and of course, people don't want to do that. Milei went into Argentina, and what did he do? Austerity, and he brought him out of the biggest crisis that can be imagined, along with Greece, and he did it in a single year. So, you have to cut government. You have to cut spending, or you will not survive. I don't understand how people can be against what our president is currently doing in the government. I don't understand, but they are. It makes no sense. It's like all people generally do is think about me. Okay, we're selfish beings. And, when it comes to, it doesn't matter, next generation can take care of that. That is not a healthy way of looking at problems. But they did get out of their crisis in Greece. They want to spend this money. My thought is they're spending all this money and, all kinds of defense systems. I'll continue that in a second. But, if you never fire those things, we've got millions of things that we developed that we never used in war. It's like throwing your money away, but you got to have this when you need to be defended against, especially on the other side of the border. You got Turkey, right? And they don't get along. They're both NATO countries, but they do not get along. And so you have to do this. Anyway, about 3 billion euros will be used to create a multi-layered anti-aircraft and anti-drone system called Achilles Shield. It is, think of Iron Dome, and they got David's Shield. Well, in Greece, they've got Achilles Shield because Achilles was a Greek, right? That's right. So it also plans to buy new stealth fighter jets, frigates, and submarines from the U.S. and Europe. We want to buy 36 PULS artillery systems and anti-aircraft systems for Achilles Shield. The negotiations with Israel will intensify next month. The cost of 36 PULS rocket artillery systems made by Israel's Elbit is estimated at $750 million. Remember, we're doing this as well. We're building what does Donald Trump call it? The Golden Dome. That's right, Golden Dome. Greece and Israel have strong economic and diplomatic ties. They have launched several joint exercises in recent years, and they operate an air training center in southern Greece. From ABC, The German government says it's lifting restrictions on exports of military equipment to Israel. They put up the restrictions. We reported on it. Now they're taking them down. Chancellor Friedrich Merz said in early August that Berlin wouldn't authorize any export of military equipment to Israel that could be used in Gaza until further notice. Since October 10th, we have had a ceasefire in Gaza, and it is fundamentally stabilized. Hille told reporters at a regular government news conference that is the basis for this decision. We expect everyone to keep the agreements that were reached. That includes the ceasefire holding, that includes humanitarian aid being provided on a large scale, and the process continuing to run in an orderly way. As agreed, he added, once the restrictions are lifted, Germany will examine military exports on a case-by-case basis, as is its standard practice with such exports. So they're going to go ahead and let Israel have it. You know, the war in Gaza apparently is over to them, and they're over their little, tiff with Israel, which, Germany has always been very good to Israel since the war. And so it was even surprising that they did this, but they kind of had to go in with the rest of the EU and bring up their pseudo charges against Israel during the war. From All Israel, 27-year-old Israeli arrested. I read these things. I've read them, a couple of them to you in the past few years, and it absolutely drives me crazy. We can understand this in the U.S. We've got all kinds of people that come here. They get their citizenship by going into the military, and they're actually working for another government. We can kind of get that. But this kind of stuff going on in Israel never ceases to amaze me. He's arrested for providing intelligence to Iran, abusing girlfriends' access to military base. So you got an Israeli that is doing this. You talk about suicide, is giving secrets to the country that wants to destroy you. And Iran has sworn to destroy Israel. I don't understand this thinking, but people they're like the left in America. All they have is, I can't say peanut butter because Mabel gets mad at me. They have lard for their brains, okay? She said, don't say peanut butter. That's delicious. And she's right. So Israel police filed an indictment on Sunday in the Haifa District Court. You know what? You can eat peanut butter with an ulcer. I did not know that. And last night we didn't have anything in the house, or yesterday morning. And I said, do we have peanut butter? Yes, you better check. I checked. Yes, peanut butter is okay with an ulcer. So guess what I had yesterday? Okay, Israel police filed an indictment on Sunday in the Haifa District Court against an Israeli citizen on charges of spying for Iran, including the passing of sensitive information on military facilities. Shimon Azar, a 27-year-old resident of Kiryat Yam, was arrested in October, along with his girlfriend, charged with providing classified information to Iran, contact with a foreign agent, and obstruction of justice. According to the indictment, Azar contacted Iranian agents on the Telegram, through which he provided his handlers with photos, locations, and details about sensitive sites in Israel. Azar was in contact with his Iranian handlers for over a year. He also received instructions for assignments. Azar is also accused of taking advantage of his girlfriend's reserve duty at an Air Force base, accessing her personal cloud account to retrieve photos from the base, classified documents, and records from the Ramat David Air Base where she was stationed. Photos of control rooms, operational control rooms, unmanned aerial vehicles, and encrypted communications data, some of which was transferred to Iranian officials. The defendant even passed on personal information of an Israeli police officer, as well as offering to carry out additional espionage missions. I can't believe this guy did these things.
She had all that on her personal?
Can you imagine that? Unbelievable. In return for his work, Azar received payments for missions and intelligence in cryptocurrency. From All Israel, Israeli-born Canadian says passport office refuses to list Israel as birthplace because of Canadian recognition of Palestine. So they won't put Israel as her birthplace, even though there's no such thing as Palestine. Got some news from Christianity here from the Gateway Pundit. Anti-Christian judge prevents mother. Listen to this article. You talk about how insane the left are in this nation, how absolutely just out of control. This is a judge. prevents mother from taking daughter to church or even reading the Bible. Listen to this article. You're not going to believe this. Now, this is obviously going to be overturned. Nothing can be done about these judges, which is the problem. The Congress needs to pass a law that gets rid of these activist judges once and for all. Emily is Christian and has worked to provide a foundation of faith for her daughter, something her non-custodial father opposes. He's been described as hating Christianity. Bradeen took the issue to court, found a former ACLU president who had become a judge, and the war on religion commenced. The judge issued a custody order that can only be viewed as hostile to Christianity. The order forbids Ava, the daughter, from associating with any of her church friends, attending church or Christian events, and even prevents Ava from studying the Bible, religious philosophy, or discussing her faith with her own mother. Can you imagine this?
No.
This is unbelievable. Ava, this person should not only not be a judge, this person should be in prison for a long time.
Is that a state judge?
I have no idea. Ava is also not allowed to participate in Christian holiday events such as Christmas. The judge found that Emily is a fit parent except for the fact that she is a Christian. The judge mocked Ava and Emily's faith by purposefully refusing to capitalize the word God. Something I have never seen. The judge even chastised Emily for allowing the church pastor to pray for Ava. Then the judge ruled that Emily could not take Ava to any church unless Matt approves. And Matt has steadfastly refused to approve any church. The order is even more intrusive. Ava cannot associate with any of her church friends or any member of Calvary Chapel, Portland. This is Portland, Maine, not the insane Portland, but this is just bad. If Ava meets a new friend outside of Calvary and that person begins attending Calvary, Ava must cut ties with that friend. Ava cannot attend any Christmas, Easter, or other Christian event or celebration at any church, including any wedding, funeral, or even hospital visits with anyone associated with Calvary Chapel. Ava cannot have any contact or participation with any religious organization. Matt Bradeen is even using the court's custody order to insist Emily cannot read the Bible or teach Ava anything about the Christian faith. I wish this were not real, but sadly it is. The majority of justices said that the order is hostile toward religion and that it used a nuclear option by taking all decision-making away from an unquestionably fit parent regarding the religious upbringing of her daughter. Staver concluded, Ava and her mother now await the Maine Supreme Court's decision. Unbelievable that this is going on in America and that this person even is allowed as a judge. The New Republic. ICE agents raid a church with no explanation. Oh! From the Christian Post. Charlotte immigration raids spill onto church property. Cleaning crew member arrested. So the New Republic says there was no explanation, but apparently they were harboring illegals. During the pursuit, a cleaning crew who were on the grounds also began to flee in different directions. McLaughlin stated, agents apprehend a member of the cleaning crew, an illegal alien from El Salvador, who was issued a final order of removal from a judge over a year ago. And so they had no explanation, according to the New Republic. You know, it's unbelievable. If we as a church, if Charlie Garrett and you all here decide we're going to do something illegal, law enforcement should have a right to come in here and arrest us for doing that. LifeSite. Arson attacks on European churches have doubled in 1 year. European churches' arson attacks. A total of 2,211 anti-Christian hate crimes were recorded in Europe in 2024, including 274 attacks on individuals. From CNN, Texas judge temporarily blocks law requiring 10 commandments in schools. The guy doesn't understand anything about the Constitution of the United States of America. But that's a typical liberal attitude on what we're going to do. So we're just going to ban things and then hope that my ban will be upheld in a higher court, which it won't. Anyway, if we have a light out in this church, like that little sign over there, it says exit. I mean, we're in a building the size of a postage stamp, and you got to have like 8,000 exit signs, and you've got it has to be illuminated. And if the power goes out, it's got to have emergency batteries. If we don't have that, we can be fined. And if I don't fix it, I can go to jail, right? I mean, you got illegals in your church and you're harboring them. There should be repercussions. Got some news from the Mideast and Africa, and I understand that people disagree with that. I do understand that. But this is America, and there is not a right to violate the law in America. Some news from the Mideast and Africa today. Zero Hedge. Syria has put a big Western flag in its gas patch less than a year after Assad overthrow. The state-owned Syrian petroleum company has signed a memorandum of understanding with ConocoPhillips to develop existing gas fields and hunt for new ones in a bid to drag the country's power sector out of wartime ruin. Damascus says the deal could lift gas output by 4 to 5 million cubic meters per day within a year from today's battered base. Syria's domestic gas production has collapsed from 8.7 billion cubic meters in 2011 to about 3 billion cubic meters in 2023. On a rough cut, that's about 8 million cubic meters a day today. Hitting the ministry's ambition would mean boosting volumes by roughly 50 to 60% if everything shows up on time and on spec. The pitch is straightforward: more gas into the grid, fewer blackouts, and less reliance on emergency molecules from Azerbaijan and Qatar flowing via regional deals and the Arab gas pipeline. But the Memorandum of Understanding is as much about geopolitics as kilowatt hours. Washington has already lifted core oil and transport sanctions on Syria and backed a U.S. consortium to design a national energy master plan. The broader Western strategy, laid out in detail by policy analysts earlier this year, is to pull Syria back into the U.S.-UK orbit, lock in long-term energy rights, and dilute Russia's once dominant position built around Tartus, Khmeim, and a web of pre-war upstream deals. All of this is happening while President Ahmed al-Sharaa is busy proclaiming tightened internal security. Damascus recently trumpeted the foiling of Islamic State plots against the president and used the scare to justify new counterterrorism powers that extend security control over civilian areas. For ConocoPhillips, the prize is early mover exposure to a gas market being rebuilt with IMF attention, UN sanctions relief, and heavy U.S. political sponsorship. So they're trying to get Syria back on track now that, and this guy was a terrorist. I understand that. All you can do is deal with whoever's in charge. And if he's willing to deal and he's willing not to be a terrorist anymore, they'll continue to deal with him. If not, then they will go in and they'll blow him up. So, I don't take the same stand that other people do on this guy. Well, Trump shouldn't be dealing with him because he was a terrorist. You deal with what you got. And if they're willing to deal, you deal. In the case of Iran, they're not willing to deal, and so you don't deal. But, then if you were to not deal with all the people over there that were terrorist inclined, you wouldn't be dealing with anybody in the Middle East at all. Okay, so they all read the same book. And as Jim wisely said earlier, their book demonstrates a God that is waffling, changing, vindictive, and the rule of law for their people is to subdue. That's what Islam is to subdue those around them. So you have to either deal with them or you just walk away, and walking away is not an option. Zero Hedge, increasingly becoming no-go areas. Violent crime explodes at German train stations. The number of violent crimes at Berlin Central Station in 2024 has tripled compared to 2019, which was the last year before the coronavirus crisis. In Cologne, why is it not pronounced Cologne? Does anybody know? Cologne. I mean, that's what it says. Anyway, violent crime has grown 70% in the same time frame. Those are just two cities, but the same trend is seen everywhere. Look at a main train station in Duisburg and Hamburg and Frankfurt. Hamburg and Frankfurt in one sentence. I'm getting hungry. Neglect drug dealers, young men, mostly with a migrant background, mostly from Eastern Europe or Arab Muslim cultural areas. This also has to do with irregular migration as it looks in our inner cities and the marketplaces. As the left promotes public transport as a big part of the solution to climate change, the reality is that taking public transport is becoming more and more dangerous. The total number of violent crimes at train stations arose. Meanwhile, women are more and more at risk. Sexual crimes increased within a year while property damage jumped. This follows data from earlier in the year that showed foreigners commit 59% of all sexual crimes on German trains and at train stations, with serious sexual crimes doubling since 2019. So they got themselves in a real pickle over there, and they're not handling it. They're not doing the Trump job, and if they don't, they're going to continue to suffer. So, as bad as what happened a couple days ago, we lost one guardsman. They both swore in just the day before, too. They were brand new, but one of them is still struggling. We need to keep that guy in prayer, but as bad as it is, Donald Trump has used that as a leverage to call a national emergency. And once he does that, the courts cannot get involved. And so he is taking action that is necessary and should never have happened in the first place. So I applaud him in what he's doing. I'm behind our president. I support him in what he's doing. And we'll just have to hope that the people will continue to have the patience with our government as these get these people out. Okay, we got people that actually have been given status, especially in Minnesota, that need to be reevaluated and they need to be ejected, including one member of Congress. They need to be ejected from this country. Zero Hedge, leftist Berlin mayoral candidate, calls for voting rights for all migrants. Of course he does. That'll solidify it forever for them. Al Jamainer, Iran built nuclear weapons instead of desalination plants. Now there is a water shortage. From JNS, Palestinian textbooks still, I've been reporting on this now for 12, 13, 14 years, whatever it's been. Palestinian textbooks still glorify attacks against Israel, violating the EU Accord. They've been doing it every year. I've reported on this. They haven't gotten rid of it, and they keep giving them money. From Mongolia, from Yahoo, this is great. Now, I had to fudge this. I want you all to know that I had to fudge this. I went to Inner Mongolia. It's actually not Mongolia, but it's so interesting that I thought you would enjoy something from Inner Mongolia. More than 2,000 camels begin their annual migration in Inner Mongolia. On November 19th, 2025, in Inner Mongolia, China, herders launched their month-long winter roundup, driving over 2,000 Bactrian camels from the Badain, Jaran, and Ulaanbaatar deserts to warmer grazing areas as part of a long-standing tradition that sustains local camel milk and wool industries. Daniel 12 technology today. I got a wow out of that one. That was great. Times of Israel. In world first. This is just unbelievable. Israeli scientists use RNA-based gene therapy to stop ALS deterioration. What a terrible disease. Anybody know what it's known as? Lou Gehrig's. Okay, Lou Gehrig's disease. Terrible, terrible disease, and they're maybe going to be able to stop the people from having this deterioration. In a groundbreaking study, researchers at Tel Aviv University, leading a large-scale international team of scientists, said they have identified an RNA molecule that can stop the nerve cell damage that causes paralysis in patients with ALS. Now they hope to use the discovery to help patients with the fatal illness. When we added a specific RNA molecule to human cells and animal models for ALS, the nerve cells stopped degenerating and even regenerated. Their study opens a new avenue for treating the disease. The team used mice that had been genetically modified to serve as biological stand-in for the disease. ALS, sometimes called Lou Gehrig's disease, is a fatal neurodegenerative condition that affects motor neurons, the nerve cells that control muscle movement. Over time, the disease causes gradual paralysis of all muscles in the body. Patients typically lose their ability to walk, speak, swallow, and breathe, often becoming completely paralyzed with their cognitive skills remaining intact. You're in a body that does nothing. You're just a brain at that point. Most patients die within 3 to 5 years of diagnosis due to paralysis of the diaphragm muscles and respiratory failure. In ALS, the neuromuscular junctions where nerve fibers meet muscle cells and transmit electrical signals from the brain to the muscles are disrupted. The molecular mechanisms underlying this damage had remained unknown until now. Unbelievable. It's a dangerous world, including the inevitable plagues noted in the book of Revelation. From Zero Hedge, ultra-processed foods linked to increased risk of precancerous colorectal tumors, study says. This is ultra-processed foods. That's pretty much anything you eat that comes out of a box in America. The first of its kind study, which took place over 24 years, found that young people who consumed high levels of ultra-processed foods reported a surge in being diagnosed with adenomas and colon polyps, which often lead to colorectal cancer. Those with the highest quintile of UPF intake had statistically significant, meaning 45% higher odds of early onset colorectal conventional adenomas compared with the lowest quintile. The study followed 29,105 female registered nurses between June 1st, 1991 through June 1st, 2015. Male nurses were not a part of the overall study. Overall, 1,189 participants born between 1947 and 1964 were diagnosed with early onset conventional adenomas, and 1,598 were diagnosed with serrated lesions. Women who had a higher intake of ultra-processed foods seemingly had an increased risk of early onset conventional adenomas, but not serrated lesions. Chan defined ultra-processed foods as ready-to-eat foods that often contain high levels of sugar, salt, saturated fat, and food additives. Add in anything from 7-Eleven, like the Bahama Mama. I love those things. But you know what? They will get you, okay? Jonathan Turley. You can't handle the truth. UK health watchdog reportedly refuses to release data on vaccine deaths to their own people. The UK's Public Health Service is reportedly refusing to release data on the potential relationship between the COVID vaccine and excess deaths. The reason? It would upset people to know the truth. The question is whether British citizens have become so passive and yielding that they will support their government, keeping them from learning the facts about vaccines and allowing them to reach their own conclusions. Can't have that. From News VA. Trump EO reinstates GI Bill benefits to veterans discharged for refusing COVID vaccine. Yay. From NTD, few Americans want to get a new COVID vaccine. Wow, saving the population there.
That's a shocker.
Gateway Pundit, 47-year-old New Jersey pilot becomes first recorded death from a rare meat allergy triggered by tick bites. We talked about that. It's all over, like the lefty places, Martha's Vineyard and Cape Cod. They can't eat meat anymore, which is great because it gives us more meat. But this guy actually died from this. Times of Israel. Iran says it has begun cloud seeding operations to induce rain amid severe drought. From RFEL, Iran weather swings from drought to floods after cloud seeding. They put too much potassium in there and it flooded an entire district. Gotta get your mix right there, Iran. Morality, MSN. Trans women attend Vatican event with Pope Leo, but they're not at the head table. So MSN is upset that they didn't get a place with the Vatican at the head table. What we should question is why they are at that event at all.
Exactly.
LifeSite. Lack of adequate health care pushing Canadians toward assisted suicide. It's so bad with their healthcare system that people just are saying, well, I might as well just nix myself. I don't want to have to face this, which is intentional, by the way. I've said this many times before. The benefits for people dying is very high for a government. The people die, and then the inheritance is taxed off by the government. They make money. The people die, the money goes to the next generation, and the next generation doesn't save it, they spend it. And so it goes to the government. It goes to buying stuff, and the government taxes it. It's very profitable for people to die. And if they can continue to get people to die, they'll have more money to just fritter away on whatever. So NCPR. More liberals, people of color, and LGBTQ Americans say they're buying guns out of fear. Fear of what? It's the right that gets targeted in this nation. I don't know of anybody that goes out and actually targets these people, and if they do, they're lunatics that are probably part of those groups of people. Anyway, and I shouldn't include people of color because that could be anybody, but what do they have to be scared of? It's the people that want to live freely and normally that are always targeted by these people. Anyway, Gateway Pundit. Free to express opinions. Oregon District pays $650,000 to settle with educators who objected to trans lessons. Good. Breitbart. Massachusetts Democrat governor appoints male transvestite to Women's Commission. The Post-Millennial, Nicki Minaj. Everybody knows Nicki Minaj shares White House's no men in women's sports on TikTok. All we needed, she says, was a new president. Gateway Pundit. U.S. Catholic bishops have voted to formally ban gender-affirming care for transgender patients in Catholic hospitals, approving revised ethical directives. Why were they doing that in the first place?
Exactly.
Guardian. State Department to cut 38 universities from research programs over DEI policies. The Post-Millennial. Alberta Premier uses emergency powers to block child sex change surgery, overrides courts. Good. Alberta is the only place left in Canada that's making the right decisions. That's why Trump, I bet you he is still pushing that in the behind the scenes, become a part of the U.S. He wasn't talking about all of Canada. He wants them to become a part of the U.S. I'll bet you he's still pushing that, and he just let it get quiet because there was so much blowback on it. Mail Online. Compulsory nude Korean spa is ordered to allow trans women into female areas only after biological male visitor sued. So it went to the courts because they said, we don't want this guy in our spa. We're all naked women. And the court said, nope, you have to let him in. So now it's going to get elevated and it'll go up again and again until it finally goes to SCOTUS. We got some other news here from The Wrap. An AI podcasting machine is churning out 3,000 episodes a week. And people are listening. They're putting out 3,000 episodes of podcasts. You know, like Joe Rogan. It's just AI. Just people are saying, make a podcast on this. They're doing 3,000 a week, and people are listening to these as if it's a real person speaking. There are at least 175,000 AI-generated podcast episodes on platforms like Spotify and Apple. That thanks to Inception Point AI, a startup with just 8 employees cranking out 3,000 episodes a week, covering everything from localized weather reports and pollen trackers to a detailed account of Charlie Kirk's assassination and its cultural impact to a biography series on Anna Wintour. Its podcasting network, Quiet Please, has generated 12 million lifetime episode downloads and amassed 400,000 subscribers. Inception Point's ability to flood the market with audio episodes faster than any human team could match starkly illustrates both the promise of AI and the nightmare scenario that can truly come after every job. Even as companies have shed more than 1 million jobs this year, with many citing AI as a reason, there was a belief that certain creative roles would be safe. The biggest allure of a podcast, after all, is the personality of its host. But Inception Point CEO Janine Wright, she's behind this Quiet Please, believes the tool is proof that automation can make podcasting scalable, profitable, and accessible without human writers, editors, or hosts. The price is now so inexpensive that you can take a lot of risks. You can make a lot of content in a lot of different genres that were never commercially viable before and serve huge audiences that have really never had content made for them. At a cost of $1 an episode, Wright takes a quantity over quality approach. So they have AI write it, they have it narrate it, they have it do every single thing. All they do is pay $1 to make this episode. They put it on there. If they get 1,000 listens, then they get the money for that, and it becomes a profit-making industry when nobody is involved in the process except the guy telling a computer what to do. That is a scary place for people to be, listening to things that have...
Someday, there won't be any need for humans on
That's-
this earth at all.
That's the point. Zero Hedge. Britain's speech gulag exposed. 10,000 arrested last year for social media posts. Britain, with much worse crime than we have in America. Britain, with people getting stabbed on subways and on the street, and people, they're passing knife bans and stupid, crazy things like that. They're out there arresting people for posting on X or Twitter or whatever. A study complete with an interactive map has revealed that UK police arrested nearly 10,000 people in 2024 for grossly offensive social media posts, equivalent to 30 arrests every single day, while knife crime, burglary, and sexual offenses go unsolved. This Orwellian crackdown, driven by vague communications laws, has turned Britain into an international embarrassment, with forces devoting more manpower to policing opinions than protecting citizens. The data shows 9,700 arrests in 2024 alone under the Communications Act 2003 and Malicious Communications Act 1988. Cumbria police topped the list with 42.5 arrests per 100,000 population, 20 times higher than the Stratfordshire's 2.1. Six forces refused to release figures. I wonder why, meaning the true total is likely far higher. The map spotlights absurd prosecutions like comedy writer Graham Lineman's 2025 Heathrow arrest by 5 armed police officers for 3 gender-critical tweets. A 71-year-old ex-cop detained 8 hours for mocking a pro-Palestinian activist, with officers mocking his very Brexity books, and parents raided at dawn over sarcastic school emails, held for 11 hours in front of their crying daughter, with eventually no charges filed. Why do you think they're doing this? It's because it's tougher to go and get bad guys than it is to just go out, make it look like you're doing your job, and you're going to harass people for no reason at all.
It's the thought police.
And that's exactly what it is. It's thought police. That's exactly what it is. These join a long list of horrors: women grilled at home over Facebook posts, men cuffed for WhatsApp gripes, and even a Telegraph journalist visited for a year-old tweet, as well as an endless list of other cases. When chief constables choose to use their finite resources on policing social media, it means they're not using that resource to tackle knife crime, sexual offenses, and shoplifting. To accommodate this speech crackdown, the government began releasing violent criminals early, up to 1,700 by September 2024, while jailing people for hurty words. Officers have openly admitted on body cam that they're too busy chasing online posts to investigate burglaries.
Wow.
Zero Hedge. Native-born workers rise by 2 million under Trump to a new record high, as foreign-born plunge by 1.6 million. The jobs report, which had something for everyone, including forecast-busting payrolls offset by the highest unemployment rate in 4 years at 4.4%, driven by another jump in black unemployment, was indisputably strong when it comes to one thing: the rotation from foreign-born workers to domestic ones. To wit, in September, the number of native-born workers surged by 676,000 after the August drop of 561,000, while foreign-born workers dropped by 70,000. Since Trump entered the White House and his policies starting impacting the economy, the number of foreign-born workers has slumped from a record 33.7 million in March to 32.1 million, a drop of 1.6 million. This has been offset by a slow but consistent increase in native-born workers, which have been unchanged for 6 years, since 2019, until the start of 2025, at which point it started to rise again, and has increased from 131.2 million in March 2025 to a new record high of 133.2 million in September. As a reminder, right before the COVID crash, the number of foreign-born workers was about 28.7 million, and increased by a whopping 4.5 million under Biden, while the number of native-born workers was actually down, a decline which serious economists blamed on demographics, a lack of unwillingness to work, and anything else. It turns out the number of native-borns could have been very easily gone up if only someone removed the massing overhang of millions of illegals flooding through the border and taking away jobs at massive pay cuts, which perfectly capable native-born Americans would have taken. So there you go. That's the story behind it. I can testify to this myself. It happened. I take care of 7-Eleven 6 days a week. I'm out there cleaning and making sure things are done. And I've said this to you all before, but I'll repeat it. When Biden took over, they changed their entire inventory at a 7-Eleven on Siesta Key from American food to almost exclusively Spanish food. Okay? Almost exclusively. Every single day, I would see workers come in for the past 20 years, taking care of the 7-Eleven, and they would be normal Americans. Spoke English, they had their business trucks or their company trucks or their private things, and they had their construction boots on, and they go down the road and they build condominiums and houses that people are building all over Siesta Key. That ended. There was one American that came to 7-Eleven every morning. One for the past 4 years. One. Hughes Pest Control, besides me. Hughes Pest Control, because he has a route down there and he's been doing it for like 20 years. Other than that guy, it was all Mexicans. All. The food was different and not a person spoke English there. And that's all gone back. They have American food there now, and you see some Mexicans, and mostly you see Americans once again. Right there. Zero hedge. Texas wants to be reimbursed for Biden open borders cost, and they should be. Members of the Texas congressional delegation are demanding the federal government reimburse the state for $11.1 billion that it spent tackling the Biden administration's open border abdication. The lawmakers, including both senators and House members, made the request in a 3-page letter to Attorney General Bondi and HHS Secretary Noem, directly blaming the previous administration for saddling Texas with the bill. The lawmakers pointed to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which provides $13 billion in reimbursement funds to states that dealt with massive influx of illegal aliens during Biden's tenure. That means that they can almost completely clean that out for Texas alone. Through the operation, Abbott ordered the deployment of state police to arrest individuals accused of state crimes and led the construction of new miles of border barriers and buoy defenses. Texas reported that at least 535,724 illegal aliens have been detained since the operation's launch. Border crossings in Texas dropped 87%. Breitbart. Venezuela sentences 65-year-old woman to 30 years in prison for a WhatsApp message. Venezuelan regime courts reportedly found Orozco guilty of treason to the fatherland, incitement to hatred, and conspiracy for having used the WhatsApp messaging platform to send a voice note last year critical of the Maduro regime, calling for people to participate in the July 28, 2024 sham presidential election that Maduro claims he won. She said, go out and vote, and she's in prison for 30 years because of it. She'll either be 95 years old or dead when they haul her out of there. Breitbart. Florida Highway Patrol arrests 6,200. This is the FHP, not ICE. FHP arrests 6,200 illegal migrants in ICE partnership. Good job, guys. ICE.gov. ICE Houston arrests more than 3,500 criminal, illegal, alien, child predators, and murderers during the shutdown. Breitbart, Golden Age, America's foreign-born population drops by 2.3 million thus far under Trump. And he's been in office for 9 months, 10, 11, it's November, 11 months. And the first 3 or 4 months, he was sued so many times they couldn't deport anybody, nobody. And many of those states are still suing. He would have 3 to 4, maybe 5 million out by now. But he has done his job, and people do not understand that the wheels of justice are very slow. He's got to abide by the law, or he will be barbecued, unlike Biden, who got away with everything. Yeah. Zero hedge, USPS. I don't know how they're still around. I don't know it. Every year I report on this. They report 5.7% decline in parcel volumes, $9 billion loss in 1 year. Every year I've reported on it. It's been $1 to $8 billion every year. How are they still out there? I don't know. I feel bad because, they just want to do their job, but it ain't paying off. And I don't know how that is going to continue. It's not a government organization so much. It's a private organization that's funded by the government. It's different than other things. But whatever the structure is, it ain't working. Okay? Who said it? The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. Mark Twain. Yeah. Okay, Lesrick, I guess. I don't know. It's either he or his wife. Complaining in Britain's a crime, and arrests come on taxpayer dime. If a cop spouts a tort, he's supposed to abort so that crooks do not get their jail time. Okay, let's see, two ironies here. Okay, the first one, I know it's sad. I always have to qualify this because somebody sends me an email. If I don't say I don't appreciate death, it's just a part of life, and it's ironic, okay? Mail online. Woman's body is found just feet from her home 7 years after she vanished when bone was mistaken for Halloween decorations. Yeah. Okay, Breitbart. I got to give you a qualifier. So the title alone is funny, but there's a little backstory. Breitbart. Woman sends message in a bottle out to sea. Gets an angry letter in return. She was left shocked and dismayed upon receiving a message scrawled on the back of a John Lydon concert flyer demanding she stop littering. What did the guy do in order to send the message back? Such is the world in which we live. So from Sarasota, Florida to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, I'm Charlie Garrett, and that is your CG Prophecy Report for the week.